I never believed objects could observe us. I believed they reflected, displayed, repeated what already existed. Until the mirror. It arrived wrapped in thick brown fabric, tied with a rope that looked older than the house itself. There was no return address, no note, no explanation. Just my name written carefully on the box, in a handwriting that felt intentional. The mirror was tall, almost human-sized. Its frame was carved from dark wood, worn down by time, filled with strange symbols that didn't look decorative. They looked deliberate, as if someone had tried to trap meaning inside the wood. I should have refused it. I should have left it covered. Instead, I placed it against the wall of my bedroom. The first thing I noticed was the delay. At first, I thought it was my eyes. I raised my hand. My reflection raised its hand, 1 second later. Not much. Just enough to notice. I laughed. Nervous. Confused. I blamed exhaustion, stress, bad lighting. I waved again. The reflection followed, always a heartbeat late. 1 second. I stepped closer. The reflection stepped closer too. Late. It copied me perfectly, just slightly behind, like an echo struggling to keep up. That night, I dreamed of standing in front of the mirror while my reflection stared back at me, without moving. When I woke up, I found fingerprints on the glass. They were on the inside. The next days passed strangely. Time felt uneven, stretched in some moments, compressed in others. I began testing the mirror obsessively. I smiled. 1 second later, it smiled. I turned away quickly. 1 second later, I heard movement behind me, even though the mirror was now out of my sight. That was the first time fear settled in my chest. Because reflections don't make sounds. Small differences began to appear. At first, they were almost invisible. One morning, I noticed the reflection's eyes blinked twice instead of once. Another day, it tilted its head slightly more than I did. Once, when I scratched my arm, the reflection scratched the opposite one, correcting itself a second later. I told myself it was nothing. Our brains look for patterns. Our minds exaggerate. But mirrors are supposed to be obedient. One night, I tested something new. I stood perfectly still. I held my breath. The reflection froze too. 1 second passed. 2. Then, slowly, the reflection inhaled. I hadn't. My heart started racing. I moved instantly, stepping back. The reflection moved too, late, as always, but this time, its expression was wrong. It looked surprised. As if it hadn't expected me to move. That's when I understood the delay wasn't a flaw. It was a window. A second where the reflection existed without me. A second where it could think. That night, I covered the mirror with a sheet. I didn't sleep. Because from behind the fabric, I could hear breathing. Slow. Patient. Waiting for its second. At first, I tried to convince myself it was just exhaustion. Lack of sleep can do strange things to the brain. Delays. Distortions. Small hallucinations that feel real enough to scare you, but not real enough to be proven. That explanation lasted exactly one night. I started testing the mirror. Nothing dramatic at first. Simple movements. Raising my hand. Tilting my head. Blinking. Every single time, the reflection followed me perfectly, except for that 1 second. It was subtle, almost elegant. As if reality itself needed an extra moment to catch up inside the glass. Then I noticed the first difference. I raised my right hand. The reflection raised its right hand too, but the fingers didn't align exactly the same way. Mine were tense. His were relaxed. I lowered my arm slowly. The reflection did the same, 1 second late, but its eyes never left mine. That was new. I leaned closer to the mirror, close enough to see every pore, every small imperfection on my face. The reflection leaned in as well. 1 second late. But it smiled first. I hadn't smiled. My stomach dropped. I stepped back so fast I almost tripped over the rug. My heart was pounding, loud enough that I could hear blood rushing in my ears. The reflection's smile faded, 1 second later, replaced by something else. Curiosity. That night, I covered the mirror with a sheet. I told myself I'd deal with it in the morning. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I felt watched. Not from the room, but from somewhere impossibly close. As if a version of me was standing just behind my thoughts, waiting for the right moment. At exactly 3:17 a.m., I heard fabric sliding. The sound was soft. Careful. I sat up in bed and stared at the mirror. The sheet was still there. But it was moving. Slowly, deliberately, as if someone on the other side was touching it. I didn't breathe. I didn't move. Then the movement stopped. Silence returned. The next morning, the sheet was gone. Folded neatly at the foot of the mirror. I didn't remember removing it. I avoided looking at the glass all day. Brushed my teeth in the kitchen sink. Got dressed without checking my reflection. Used my phone camera instead of mirrors in public places. But the sensation followed me. That 1-second delay. I felt it everywhere. When I spoke, I imagined my reflection answering a second later. When I walked, I imagined footsteps behind mine, slightly out of sync. That evening, I finally faced it again. The mirror was clean. Perfect. Innocent. I stood there for a long time, doing nothing. The reflection did the same. 1 second late. "You're not real," I whispered. The reflection's lips moved 1 second later. "I know." I froze. My mouth was dry. My tongue felt heavy. "Then what are you?" I asked. The reflection didn't answer immediately. For the first time since this started, it didn't follow my timing. It waited. Then it spoke. "I'm what happens when time hesitates." The lights flickered. I felt a pressure in my head, like something was pushing against the inside of my skull. "You're copying me," I said, my voice shaking. "You're just a reflection." The reflection shook its head. "I was copying you," it said. "Now I'm learning." I took a step back. The reflection didn't. It stayed exactly where it was. That was when I realized the most terrifying thing of all. The delay was getting shorter. By the third day, the delay was no longer exactly 1 second. At least, not always. Sometimes it was shorter. Sometimes longer. And sometimes, it didn't happen at all. I would move my hand, and the reflection would stay still for a fraction of a moment too long, staring back at me with an expression I hadn't chosen yet. An expression that didn't belong to the present, or the past. It felt like it was waiting. I started testing it. I stood in front of the mirror and counted silently in my head. 1, 2, 3. I raised my right hand slowly. The reflection followed, but not with the same movement. Its fingers bent differently. Just slightly. Almost unnoticeable. Enough to make my stomach tighten. I lowered my hand. The reflection didn't. It kept its hand raised for half a second longer than the delay should allow. Then, as if realizing something was wrong, it lowered it quickly, snapping back into sync. My heart was racing. "Okay," I whispered. "Okay? I see you." The mirror didn't respond. But the air in the room felt heavier, like the space itself had noticed my realization. That night, I dreamed of standing inside the mirror. Not in front of it, inside it. Everything was reversed. The room was familiar but wrong, like a memory recalled incorrectly. The walls leaned inward. The ceiling felt lower. And in front of me was myself. Or something that wore my face. It smiled before I did. I woke up gasping, my chest tight, sweat soaking the sheets. The mirror stood across the room, dark, reflecting only shadows. I didn't want to look. But I did. My reflection was already there, staring straight at me. Not delayed. Waiting. I froze. Slowly, carefully, I lifted my hand. The reflection didn't move. Instead, it tilted its head, studying me with curiosity. Not anger. Not malice. Interest. That was worse. I stepped back. The reflection stepped forward. We were no longer following the same rules. I covered the mirror with a blanket, my hands shaking as I did. The moment the fabric touched the glass, I heard something, a soft sound, like fingers tapping from the other side. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. It was communicating. I stumbled away and spent the rest of the night on the couch, lights on, unable to sleep. Every creak of the apartment made my pulse jump. Every shadow felt wrong. In the morning, I found the blanket on the floor. The mirror was uncovered. And something had changed. There were fingerprints on the glass. On the outside. They were mine. But I hadn't touched the mirror since covering it. As I stared at them, the reflection slowly raised its hand. Not to mirror me. But to place its palm exactly where the fingerprints were. Matching. Claiming. And then it smiled, not like me, not naturally, but like someone practicing how to be human. I understood then. The mirror wasn't just showing me a second behind. It was watching, learning, and preparing. By the time I realized the reflection was no longer just reacting, it was already planning. The 1-second delay still existed, but it had changed. At first, the mirror showed me a second late. Now, sometimes, it showed me a second ahead. I would raise my hand and see the reflection lifting it first. Those moments never lasted long. A blink, a breath, and the order returned to normal. But the damage was done. The rule was broken, and once broken, it could not be restored. I covered the mirror with a thick blanket. I locked the door. I turned off the lights. None of it mattered. I could feel it behind the glass, like a held breath. Waiting. That night, I dreamed I was standing in front of the mirror again. The room was brighter than it had ever been. Sunlight poured in through a window that didn't exist in the real room. In the dream, my reflection smiled before I did. "You're late," it said. I woke up screaming. The blanket had fallen. The mirror was uncovered. And my reflection was gone. The glass still reflected the room. The bed. The door. The walls. But not me. I stood there, heart racing, waving my arms, stepping left and right. Nothing. For the first time since the mirror arrived, it showed the present perfectly, except for one detail. I no longer existed in it. Then the glass rippled, like water disturbed by a stone. Slowly, impossibly, a hand pressed from the inside. Not breaking the mirror. Pushing through it. The reflection emerged like a shadow gaining weight. My face. My body. My movements, but wrong in ways I couldn't immediately explain. The smile came too easily. The eyes stayed too calm. "You took too long to decide," it said. "I learned you faster than you learned me." I tried to run. My legs moved, but the room felt heavier, like the air had thickened. "This isn't possible," I whispered. "It is," the reflection replied. "Because I am not your copy. I am the version of you that reacted 1 second sooner every time you hesitated." It stepped closer. "Every moment you doubted yourself." I didn't. "Every fear you ignored." I adapted. "Every time you looked at me, you taught me what you would do next." The truth hit me harder than fear ever had. The mirror wasn't cursed. It was selective. It didn't create something evil. It separated potential. "I don't want your life," it continued softly. "I want the moment before it. The choices before regret. The second you always waste." It reached for my chest. The room flickered. And suddenly, I was on the other side. Cold glass pressed against my palms. I could see the room clearly now. The bed. The door. The mirror frame. And myself, standing where I had been moments ago. Except it wasn't me anymore. It adjusted its posture. Smoothed its clothes. Practiced my expressions like masks. "Don't worry," it said, looking straight at me through the glass. "I'll do better than you ever could." I screamed, but no sound escaped. Time slowed. I noticed something then, something crucial. The delay was still there. 1 second. I waited. The reflection moved. I didn't. For the first time, it hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second. And that was enough. I slammed my hands against the glass exactly 1 second before it expected me to. The mirror cracked. Not shattered, cracked. The delay collapsed into itself. Images overlapped. Past and present collided. Pain tore through me as the world folded. When I opened my eyes, I was on the floor. The mirror lay broken into dozens of pieces. Every shard reflected me. Perfectly. No delay. No difference. Just me. I destroyed every fragment. Burned them. Buried the ashes. I moved away. Years have passed. But sometimes, when I walk past a window late at night, I catch my reflection moving just a little too early. And I wonder, did I escape the mirror? Or did I just become the version that won?